The Council fleet opened fire with weapons that had destroyed countless worlds before. Brilliant beams of energy lanced through space, each one powerful enough to vaporize a city. But where they expected Earth's ships to explode into debris, something impossible happened. The human vessels flickered like ghosts, the deadly energy passing harmlessly through their hulls. Aboard the Council flagship, Ambassador Velthar's multiple eyes widened in shock. "What is this? Why are our weapons ineffective?" His tactical officer manipulated holographic controls with frantic movements. "Their ships are phasing through our energy matrix. This technology should not exist. They are too primitive for this." "Then explain it," Velthar roared. On the horizon, Deho allowed himself a thin smile. Taeyang's modifications were working perfectly. The young engineer had discovered that Council weapons fired on predictable frequencies. By adjusting their shield harmonics to match and phase with those frequencies, Earth ships could effectively become invisible to enemy fire for crucial seconds. "All ships, execute attack pattern Omega," Deho ordered. "Hit them fast, hit them hard, then scatter." What followed was chaos the Council had never experienced. Human ships didn't form orderly battle lines. They didn't engage in honorable combat. They attacked like wolves, darting in from unexpected angles, firing missiles and kinetic rounds, then vanishing before the Council could respond. The ESS Falcon, a small destroyer, screamed past a Council cruiser at impossible speed, launching a spread of missiles directly into its engine ports. The cruiser's shields were designed to stop energy weapons from the front, not physical projectiles from below. Explosions rippled across its hull. The ESS Thunder emerged from behind Earth's moon, railguns blazing. Solid metal slugs moving at relativistic speeds punched through Council armor like paper. The aliens had never encountered kinetic weapons in serious warfare. Their shields couldn't adapt fast enough. "They fight without honor," Velthar snarled, watching his fleet take damage from tactics he considered barbaric. "They strike from hiding like cowards." His tactical officer looked up from the damage reports. "Ambassador, we have lost 17 ships. Another 34 are damaged. Their weapons are primitive but effective. They are not fighting the way we anticipated." "All ships maintain formation," Velthar commanded. "Focus fire on their largest vessels. Demonstrate Council superiority." But Deho had no intention of letting the Council dictate the terms of battle. "Beacon units, deploy now," he ordered. Small automated drones, each no larger than a person, activated throughout the battlefield. They began broadcasting false sensor readings, creating phantom ships that appeared on Council scanners. The enemy fleet wasted precious seconds firing at targets that didn't exist while human ships struck from their blind spots. Meanwhile, Hana and Jiwoo were still aboard the Council flagship, and they had no intention of remaining passive. When the battle began, their alien guards had rushed to combat stations, leaving the two diplomats in a secure holding area. "Now or never," Jiwoo said, pulling a small device from his sleeve. Before boarding the Council ship, Taeyang had given them an experimental EMP generator, disguised as a translation device. "Will it work?" Hana asked. Taeyang said it should overload their security systems for about 90 seconds. "That's all we get." Jiwoo activated the device. The lights in their section flickered and died. The energy barrier holding them vanished. They ran into the corridor, using the brief darkness to navigate toward what they hoped was a critical system. They found it by accident. A massive chamber filled with pulsing conduits that seemed to carry energy throughout the ship. Jiwoo recognized it immediately from the technical scans Earth had taken. Life support distribution. "If we can damage this, we can force sections of the ship to evacuate." "We're not trying to kill them," Hana reminded him. "No, but we can make Velthar's day a lot worse." They worked quickly, using emergency tools from a nearby maintenance station. The Council's technology was advanced, but engineering principles remained universal. Find the main conduits, sever the connections, and let chaos handle the rest. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Hana and Jiwoo didn't wait to admire their work. They sprinted toward the hangar bay, following the route they had memorized during their first visit. Behind them, sections of the flagship began experiencing life support failures. Crew members evacuated to secure areas. The ship's command became fragmented as officers dealt with the internal crisis instead of the external battle. Velthar received the reports with mounting fury. "Find those humans. I want them captured immediately." But Hana and Jiwoo had already reached the hangar. They found a small shuttle, similar to the one that had brought them aboard. The controls were alien, but desperate people learned quickly. Jiwoo's fingers flew across the interface, hoping he was activating launch sequences and not self-destruct protocols. The shuttle lifted off just as council guards burst into the hangar. Energy weapons fired, scorching the shuttle's hull, but they were already accelerating toward the hangar's atmospheric shield. They punched through it and into open space, dodging debris and weapons fire. ESS Horizon, this is Diplomat Jiwoo, he called over the emergency channel. 2 humans in stolen council shuttle requesting immediate pickup before they realize we're not supposed to know how to fly this thing. Daeho's response was quick. Falcon, break off your attack run and recover our people. The destroyer veered toward them, its hangar bay doors opening. Hana piloted the stolen shuttle inside with seconds to spare before a council frigate could intercept them. The battle raged for 6 more hours. The council fleet, designed for overwhelming force against helpless targets, found itself struggling against an enemy that refused to fight fair. Human ships used the orbital debris around Earth as cover. They fired from behind the moon, used Mars as a launching point, and even weaponized old satellites by ramming them into council vessels. By the time Velthar finally ordered a retreat, the council had lost 43 ships. Nearly 30% of the force that had confidently arrived to subjugate Earth was now floating wreckage. The human losses were lighter, but still significant. 8 ships destroyed, dozens more damaged, 3,000 crew members dead. It was the bloodiest day in human history, but they had won. Aboard the Horizon, Daeho watched the council fleet withdraw to the outer system. His bridge crew cheered, hugging each other with relief and triumph. But Daeho remained quiet, his expression thoughtful. "Sir, we did it," his weapons officer said. "We beat them." "We survived the first engagement," Daeho corrected. "That's not the same as winning. Velthar will report to the council. They'll send reinforcements. We bought ourselves time, nothing more." His words dampened the celebration, but everyone knew he was right. This was just the beginning. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Young-sik stood in the command center, surrounded by tactical displays showing the aftermath of the battle. World leaders joined via holographic link, their faces showing a mixture of relief and terror. "Admiral, what's our status?" the UN Secretary General asked. "We won this battle through surprise and unconventional tactics," Young-sik replied. "The Council wasn't prepared for an enemy that fights dirty. But they'll adapt. They'll return with more ships, better strategies, and the determination to make an example of us. Then we negotiate," one leader suggested. "We've proven we can fight. Maybe now they'll treat us as equals." Young-sik shook his head. "You didn't see what Hana and Jiwoo reported. The Council doesn't negotiate with species they consider inferior. They conquer or destroy. There's no middle ground." "Then what do we do?" another voice asked. "We attack," Young-sik said simply. The room fell silent. The Council has ruled for 12,000 years because no one has ever challenged their authority. Every species they encounter either submits immediately or gets destroyed quickly. Their entire power structure is based on fear and perceived invincibility. "You want to take the war to them?" someone asked incredulously. "We barely survived defending our own planet." "That's exactly why we have to strike now," Young-sik explained. "They think we're desperate primitives who got lucky. They won't expect us to attack Council space itself. If we can strike at their core worlds, damage their infrastructure, prove they're not invincible, other species might find the courage to resist too." "This is insane," a leader objected. "So was fighting them in the first place," Young-sik countered. "But we're still here. The question is, do we wait for them to come back stronger, or do we hit them while they're still reeling from today's shock?" The debate continued for hours, but Young-sik had already made his decision. He had seen what submission meant from Hana and Jiwoo's report. Living species reduced to mindless workers, their cultures erased, their freedom destroyed. That fate was worse than death. When the vote finally came, it was closer than he expected, but the result was clear. Earth would take the offensive. Daeho received the orders while his crew was still repairing battle damage. When he read them, he felt his heart sink and soar simultaneously. They were going to attack Council Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council itself. "It's a suicide mission," his executive officer said quietly. "Probably," Daeho agreed. The massive ship appeared without warning above Earth's orbit. It was larger than anything humanity had ever built, stretching across the sky like a metal moon. Within hours, every telescope, every satellite, every defense system on the planet was pointed at the alien vessel. The world held its breath. Captain Deho stood on the bridge of the ESS Horizon, Earth's most advanced warship. His hands gripped the edge of the command console as he stared at the alien ship through the viewport. He had trained his entire life for moments like this, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of first contact. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," his communications officer reported. Her voice was steady, but Deho could hear the fear underneath. "Put it through," he ordered. The screen flickered to life. The creature that appeared was unlike anything from Earth. It stood tall on 4 legs, its body covered in blue crystalline scales that seemed to glow with inner light. Multiple eyes arranged in a circle around its head fixed on Deho with cold intelligence. "I am Ambassador Velthar of the Galactic Council," the creature spoke. The translation software worked perfectly, rendering its words in clear English. "Your species has been discovered. Your planet falls under Council jurisdiction. You will submit to our authority." Deho felt his jaw tighten. "This is Captain Deho of Earth Defense Fleet. We are willing to establish diplomatic relations, but Earth answers to no one but its own people." Velthar's eyes seemed to brighten, an expression that might have been amusement. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. The Galactic Council has ruled the Orion Arm for 12,000 years. 17 species bow to our wisdom. You will be the 18th. You have 72 hours to surrender your military assets. Acknowledge Council sovereignty and prepare for tribute collection. Refuse and we will reduce your cities to ash from orbit." The transmission ended abruptly. The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned to look at Deho, waiting for his response. "Get me Fleet Admiral Youngsik," Deho said quietly. "Now." While Deho contacted Earth Command, 2 diplomats were already preparing for a more direct approach. Hana Kim stood in the shuttle bay adjusting her uniform. Beside her, Jiwoo Park checked his translation devices one more time. "Are you sure about this?" Jiwoo asked. "Boarding their ship could be a trap," Hana smiled grimly. "If they wanted us dead, they could have fired already. They want submission, not genocide. That gives us leverage." "What leverage?" "They have ships that can destroy planets. We have barely left our own solar system. We have something they don't expect," Hana said. "We have the ability to say no." The shuttle launched from Luna Base, crossing the distance to the alien flagship. As they approached, the ship's true size became terrifying. It was a city floating in space, bristling with weapons that could crack continents. They were brought aboard by silent alien guards, escorted through corridors that seemed to pulse with strange energy. Finally, they reached a massive chamber where Ambassador Velthar waited, surrounded by representatives of other species. "You come to accept our terms?" Velthar asked. "We come to understand them," Hana replied carefully. "The people of Earth need to know what Council membership means." Velthar gestured to the other aliens. "These are members of the Council. Proud species, all of them. They enjoy Council protection, Council resources, Council wisdom." Jiwoo studied the other aliens carefully. Something was wrong. They stood too still, their eyes too vacant. "What happened to them?" he asked. "They submitted," Velthar said simply. "As you will." Hana felt ice run down her spine. "You're not offering membership. You're offering slavery." "Such primitive thinking," Velthar said. "We offer order, structure, peace. Your weapons will be dismantled. Your ships will be scrapped. Your population will be assigned tasks suitable to their abilities. You will mine, you will build, you will serve. In return, you will have security. Security as prisoners," Jiwoo said. "Security as children under the care of a superior civilization," Velthar corrected. "Look at them." He pointed to the other species. "They resisted once, as you do now. They learned. Their worlds were saved from their own violent natures. Your world will be saved as well, whether you choose to cooperate or not." Hana and Jiwoo exchanged glances. They had learned what they needed to know. There would be no negotiation, no compromise. The Council saw humanity as nothing more than resources to be exploited. "We need to report this to our leaders," Hana said. "Report what you wish," Velthar said dismissively. "You have 68 hours remaining. Choose wisely." Meanwhile, on Luna Base, Taiyang was making a discovery of his own. The young engineer had been analyzing the energy signatures from the Council ship since it arrived. The data was fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. "Look at this," he called to his team. "Their weapon systems run on a predictable energy cycle. Every 17 seconds, there's a microsecond gap in their shield harmonics." His supervisor frowned. "What good does that do us? We don't have weapons that can exploit a microsecond gap." Tae-Yang smiled. "We do if we modify our missile guidance systems. If we can phase our attacks to hit during those gaps, their shields become useless." "That's theoretical," his supervisor objected. "Everything is theoretical until we try it," Tae-Yang replied. "And right now, theory is all we have." Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Young-sik convened an emergency meeting of world leaders. The holographic conference room was filled with presidents, prime ministers, and generals from every nation. For once, old conflicts were forgotten. Humanity faced extinction if they couldn't unite. "The situation is clear," Young-sik said, his weathered face showing the strain of sleepless hours. "The Galactic Council offers us slavery or death. I say we give them neither." "We can't fight them," one leader objected. "They have technology thousands of years beyond ours." "They have technology that follows rules," Daeho interjected, appearing via hologram from the horizon. "Rules we can learn, patterns we can exploit." "You're talking about war with an enemy we know nothing about," another leader said. "We know they're arrogant." Hana's voice came through the speakers. She and Jiwoo had just returned from the council ship. "We know they expect submission. We know they've never been defied successfully. Every species they encountered either submitted or was destroyed. They don't know how to handle resistance." "Because resistance is suicide," someone muttered. "Maybe," Young-sik acknowledged, "but I'd rather die standing than live on my knees. And I don't think we have to die. Engineer Tae-Yang has found weaknesses in their systems. Captain Daeho has strategies they won't expect. Diplomats Hana and Jiwoo have intelligence about their operations. We have something the Council doesn't have." "What's that?" a skeptical voice asked. 12,000 years of human warfare," Young-sik said grimly. "Every dirty trick, every guerrilla tactic, every asymmetric strategy humans have developed to fight superior forces. The Council fights formal battles with rules and honor. We'll fight to survive with everything we have." The debate raged for hours, but in the end the decision was unanimous. Earth would not submit. If the Council wanted humanity's surrender, they would have to take it by force. As the deadline approached, Daeho positioned his fleet in hidden locations throughout the solar system. Asteroid bases became weapons platforms. Mining ships were converted to missile carriers. Every resource Earth had was directed toward the coming battle. Tae-Yang worked without sleep, modifying every weapon system in the fleet to exploit the gaps he discovered. Hana and Jiwoo briefed intelligence services on everything they'd learned about Council operations. Young-sik coordinated the defense from Earth Command, knowing that this might be humanity's last stand. When Velthar's deadline expired, the Council fleet moved into attack formation. Hundreds of ships surrounded Earth, weapons charging with deadly light. The alien ambassador's voice echoed across all frequencies. "Your time has ended. Submit now and we will be merciful. Resist and you will be erased." Daeho stood on the bridge of the horizon watching the enemy fleet position itself. His crew looked to him, waiting for the order. He thought about everything humanity had built, everything they stood for, everything they would lose if they surrendered. "All ships," he said into the fleet-wide channel. "This is Captain Daeho. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. Today we teach the Council that Earth bows to no one. All ships, weapons free. Engage at will." The darkness of space lit up with weapons fire as Earth's fleet emerged from hiding. The first battle for humanity's freedom had begun. The Galactic Council had claimed authority over Earth, but they were about to learn that some species refuse to be ruled. And sometimes defiance is enough to shatter the stars themselves. But if we're going to die anyway, let's make sure the galaxy remembers what happened when someone told humanity to kneel. He activated the fly. The journey to Council Prime took 3 weeks. Tae-Yang's experimental slipstream drives pushed the laws of physics to their breaking point, carrying Earth's fleet across distances that should have taken months. Every day, the young engineer made adjustments, fine-tuning the systems while praying they wouldn't tear the ships apart. Daeho spent those weeks planning the impossible. His tactical team worked around the clock, studying every piece of intelligence they had on Council Prime. The planet was the heart of an empire that had stood for 12 millennia. Its defenses were legendary, built by 17 species over thousands of years. The orbital platforms alone could destroy our entire fleet, his tactical officer said, pointing to holographic displays showing massive defense stations surrounding the planet. Each one has more firepower than everything we brought. Then we don't fight them head-on, Deho replied. We make them fight each other. He had learned something important from the first battle. The Council expected formal warfare, orderly and predictable. They had rules, protocols, and standard procedures. Humanity's advantage was that they had no rules except survival. When Earth's fleet finally emerged from slipstream near Council Prime, alarms screamed across the planet's defense network. Nothing should have been able to approach undetected. The human ships had appeared inside the defense perimeter, bypassing the early warning systems entirely. Impossible, the Council Defense Commander gasped, watching the scanners. Their technology cannot do this, but it had. And now 30 human warships hung in space above the most protected planet in the known galaxy. The orbital defense platforms turned their massive weapons toward the intruders, ready to atomize them. Deho didn't give them the chance. Execute virus protocol now, he ordered. Months ago, when Hana and Jiwoo had been aboard Velthar's flagship, they had done more than just sabotage life support. They had planted a sophisticated computer virus in the Council's network, designed by Earth's best hackers. The virus had spread quietly through Council systems, waiting for activation. Now it woke up. Defense platforms suddenly found their targeting systems locking onto each other instead of the human ships. Automated weapons fired on their own allies. The carefully coordinated defense network descended into chaos as systems reported false threats and executed incorrect commands. All ships, scatter and engage targets of opportunity, Deho commanded. Make them chase us through their own defenses. The human fleet split into small groups, weaving between the massive orbital stations. When Council ships tried to pursue, they had to navigate through friendly fire from their own automated defenses. It was chaos, exactly what Deho wanted. While space above Council Prime erupted into battle, Minji was leading her special operations team toward the planet's surface. Their stealth shuttle, coated with experimental materials that bent sensor waves, slipped through the confusion and entered the atmosphere. Target is the central communications hub, Minji briefed her team. We take that down, the Council can't coordinate their response. They'll be fighting blind. The shuttle landed in a deserted industrial sector. The team moved quickly through the alien city, their combat suits adapting to match the environment. Council Prime was beautiful in a cold, sterile way. Massive towers reached toward the sky, connected by bridges of crystalline material. But there was something wrong about it. No laughter, no music, no life, just efficiency and order. They found the communications hub exactly where intelligence said it would be. A massive building at the city's center, protected by energy barriers and armed guards. Minji studied it through enhanced optics, calculating their approach. We go in loud, she decided. Plant charges on the main power conduits, then extract before the whole thing comes down. That's not very subtle, one of her team members observed. Subtle didn't bring us across the galaxy to attack the Council's home world, Minji replied. We're here to send a message. The attack was brutal and efficient. Human soldiers had trained for years in asymmetric warfare. The Council guards had trained to maintain order against compliant populations. It wasn't a fair fight. Explosives placed with precision brought down sections of the communications hub. Council forces tried to respond, but Minji's team was already moving to secondary targets. Power stations, data centers, transportation hubs. Everything that kept the city functioning became a target. Above the planet, the space battle had been raging for hours. Deho's gambit with the defense platforms had worked better than expected. Nearly half of the orbital defenses had been destroyed or disabled, most by their own automated systems. But the Council was adapting. Fresh ships arrived from other systems, and these commanders had learned from Velthar's mistakes. They didn't try to engage in close combat. Instead, they formed a blockade, trying to trap the human fleet against the planet. Sir, we're running out of room to maneuver, the navigation officer reported. They're boxing us in. Deho studied the tactical display. The Council was finally using their numbers advantage properly. In another hour, They would have Earth's fleet completely surrounded. Then a new voice came over the communication channel, speaking in heavily accented English. "Human vessels, this is the Krell ship Defiance. We are breaking formation and joining your fight." Daeho's head snapped up. On the tactical display, 3 Council ships suddenly changed their transponder codes and turned their weapons on their former allies. "This is the Vrax carrier Morning Light," another voice announced. "The Council's authority ends today. We stand with Earth." More ships broke away from the Council formation. Species that had been forced into submission for centuries saw humanity's defiance and found their own courage. The Council fleet began to fracture. Ambassador Velthar, commanding the Council forces from his repaired flagship, watched in horror as his fleet dissolved. "Traitors, you are all traitors to the Council." "The Council is dead," came a reply from a Krell commander. "You just haven't realized it yet." The battle shifted dramatically. With allied ships attacking from within their own formation, the Council fleet collapsed into confusion. Ships that had worked together for years were suddenly firing on each other. Daeho pressed the advantage, coordinating with the defecting vessels to maximize the chaos. On the planet's surface, something even more significant was happening. Minji's destruction of the communications hub had an unexpected effect. The Council used centralized systems to maintain control over the subjugated species living on Council Prime. With those systems down, the programming that kept populations docile began to fail. Workers from a dozen species suddenly looked around and remembered who they had been before the Council broke them. Anger, long suppressed, boiled to the surface. Riots erupted across the city. The peaceful, orderly capital of the Galactic Council descended into chaos. "We need to extract now," one of Minji's team members urged. "This whole city is coming apart." "Not yet," Minji said, watching the growing unrest through her optics. "This is bigger than our mission. These people are waking up. We need to help them." She switched to a general broadcast frequency, hoping some of the freed workers still had translation devices. "People of Council Prime, you have been slaves long enough. Earth offers you alliance, not subjugation. Fight for your freedom." The message spread through the chaotic streets. Some species took up arms against their Council overseers. Others simply fled, seeking shelter from the violence. But all of them were choosing for themselves for the first time in generations. Above the planet, Velthar made a desperate decision. "Activate the Starbreaker," he commanded. His officers stared at him in shock. "Ambassador, that weapon is forbidden except by unanimous Council vote. It is only to be used in the most extreme circumstances." "These are extreme circumstances," Velthar roared. "The humans have destroyed everything. They have turned our own people against us. They must be eliminated, whatever the cost." The Starbreaker was the Council's ultimate weapon, a device so terrible that even the Council itself feared to use it. It could trigger a star to go supernova, destroying entire solar systems. The Council had used it only 3 times in its history, each time to make an example of a species that resisted too effectively. Now, Velthar wanted to use it on Earth's sun, to eliminate humanity completely and send a message to any other species considering rebellion. But Hana had been working on something else during these weeks of preparation. While aboard the Council flagship during her first visit, she had noticed references to something called the Starbreaker in the computer systems. She had reported it to Earth intelligence, and they had been searching for information ever since. She found it in the Council archives, in a section that should have been encrypted but had been left vulnerable by the chaos of battle. The Starbreaker's location, its activation codes, everything. "Daeho," she called over the command channel. "I found it. The Starbreaker is in a facility on Council Prime's moon. If they activate it, Earth dies. Can we destroy it? I'm sending you the coordinates now. But Daeho, if they activate it before we can reach it, there's nothing we can do. The device works faster than light. Earth would be dead before we even knew it was fired." The aftermath of the battle left Council Prime in chaos. Daeho stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching the planet below through the viewport. Smoke rose from a dozen cities. Ships drifted in orbit, some human, some alien, all bearing the scars of combat. They had won, but the victory felt hollow with so many dead. "Captain, we're receiving communications from multiple species," his officer reported. "They're asking what happens now." That was the question everyone wanted answered. The Galactic Council's authority had been shattered, but something had to replace it. Power vacuums didn't stay empty for long. Deho activated a fleet-wide broadcast knowing that dozens of species were listening. "This is Captain Deho of Earth. We did not come here to conquer. We came here to survive. The Council tried to make us slaves. We showed them that some species would rather die than submit. Now the Council is broken, but we don't want to become what we fought against." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Earth proposes a meeting. All species, all voices equal. We can build something better than the Council, something based on choice instead of force. Anyone who wants to participate is welcome. Anyone who wants to leave is free to go." The response was mixed. Some species, freed from Council control after centuries, cheered the proposal. Others, uncertain and afraid of the unknown, hesitated. A few, loyal to the old order, rejected it outright. But among those who listened with interest was Hana. She had survived the battle on Council Prime's surface and now stood in what remained of the Council's government complex. The building was half destroyed, its grand halls filled with rubble and the bodies of those who had died fighting for and against the old order. "We need to move quickly," she told Minji, who had joined her after extracting her team from the riots. "The Council is broken, but someone needs to establish order before everything collapses completely." Minji nodded. "I've been in contact with representatives from 7 species who defected during the battle. They're willing to work with us, but they're scared. The Council ruled for 12,000 years. Some of these species don't remember what freedom looks like." "Then we teach them," Hana said. "We show them that freedom doesn't mean chaos." She sent a message to Earth requesting diplomatic support. Fleet Admiral Young Sik responded within hours, authorizing her to begin preliminary negotiations. Hana became Earth's ambassador to the new order, whether she was ready for it or not. While Hana worked on building a political solution, a more immediate threat was developing. The Korvax prelate, leader of one of the Council's founding species, had not been at Council Prime during the attack. Now from his homeworld deep in the galactic core, he watched the news of the Council's defeat with cold fury. "This cannot stand," he told his war council. "The humans have destroyed an order that took millennia to build. They have convinced weak-minded species to betray their oaths. They must be eliminated, and every species that aided them must be punished." The prelate commanded the largest remaining loyal fleet in Council space, 500 warships, all crewed by species who believed in the Council's mission. They had been held in reserve, protecting the core worlds. Now he mobilized them all, determined to make an example of Earth that would echo through history. On Earth, Young Sik received the intelligence reports about the Korvax mobilization with grim acceptance. "How long until they reach Earth?" 3 weeks, maybe 4, his intelligence officer replied. "Their fleet is 5 times larger than what we faced at Council Prime. And we're in no condition to fight them," Young Sik said. Earth's fleet had suffered heavy casualties. Ships needed repairs, crews needed rest, and supply lines were stretched across half the galaxy. He called an emergency meeting with world leaders. The holographic conference room filled with worried faces. They had celebrated victory over the Council, but now faced an even larger threat. "We can't win a direct confrontation," Young Sik said bluntly. "The Korvax fleet is too large, too well armed. If they reach Earth, we lose. Then we negotiate," someone suggested. "Perhaps we can find common ground." "The prelate isn't interested in negotiation," Minji's voice came through from Council Prime. "I've been monitoring his communications. He sees this as an existential fight. Either the old Council order is restored or everything burns." "Then what do we do?" a leader asked. "We can't fight and we can't negotiate. Are we just supposed to surrender after everything we've sacrificed?" Young Sik looked at the tactical displays, thinking. Then an idea began to form. "We don't fight them at Earth, we fight them at Neptune." "The Neptune defense line?" someone asked. "That's barely functional after we stripped it for the Council Prime assault." "Exactly," Young Sik said. "The prelate knows that. He'll expect an easy breakthrough. But what if we don't face him alone?" He turned to Hana, whose image appeared in the hologram. "You've been negotiating with the defector species. How many of them would be willing to fight alongside us?" Hana considered the question. "The Krell would. They hate the Korvax more than they fear them. The Vrax might if we can guarantee protection for their homeworlds." Some of the others are scared, but they know if Earth falls, the prelate will hunt them down next. Then make it official. Young Sik ordered. Form an alliance. Not a council that rules, but a coalition that defends. Species that choose to stand together against tyranny. As Hana began the difficult work of forging an alliance from species that had been enemies for centuries, Tai Yang was working on another solution. The young engineer had been studying captured council technology, looking for any advantage. "I think I found something," he told his team. "The Korvax ships are old, really old. They were built 2,000 years ago and have been upgraded many times, but the core systems are ancient. And I found a vulnerability." He displayed technical schematics on the holographic screen. "Their power distribution network has a flaw. If we can hit it with a specific frequency pulse, it causes a cascade failure. The ship doesn't explode, it just loses power. Can we build weapons that use this pulse?" His supervisor asked. "Better," Tai Yang said with a tired smile. "I can modify our existing weapons to include it. Every ship, every missile, every railgun round. If we hit them right, we can disable their entire fleet without destroying it." "Why wouldn't we want to destroy them?" someone asked. Tai Yang looked uncomfortable. "Because killing thousands of people should be a last resort, not a first choice. If we can win by disabling rather than destroying, isn't that better?" The question hung in the air. Earth had fought brutally for survival, but now they had a choice. They could be conquerors or something better. Young Sik made the decision. "Implement Tai Yang's modifications. We disable what we can, destroy what we must. But we show the galaxy that Earth fights for survival, not for revenge." 3 weeks later, the Korvax prelate's fleet arrived at the Neptune defense line. The prelate stood on his flagship's bridge, confident in his overwhelming numerical advantage. 500 ships against Earth's battered fleet. It would be a massacre. Then the scanners showed something unexpected. Dozens of ships bearing the markings of species that should have been loyal to the Council were positioned alongside the human vessels. "Traitors," the prelate hissed. "They fight beside the humans." 63 vessels, prelate," his tactical officer reported. "Krelvrax and others. They've formed some kind of alliance." "It matters not," the prelate declared. "We still outnumber them 5-1. All ships advance. Show these fools what happens when they defy the natural order." The Korvax fleet moved forward in perfect formation, a display of military precision that was meant to intimidate. But Deho, commanding the defense from the horizon, was no longer intimidated by superior numbers. "All ships hold position," he ordered. "Wait for them to enter optimal range." The Allied fleet, a mixture of human and alien vessels that had barely trained together, held steady. They looked pathetic compared to the Korvax armada, but appearances could be deceiving. As the Korvax fleet crossed into range, Deho gave the order. "All ships fire at will. Target their power systems." The battle began with a different character than the previous fights. Human weapons modified with Tai Yang's frequency pulse struck Korvax ships with precision. Instead of explosions, the enemy vessels simply went dark, drifting in space as their power systems cascaded into failure. "What is happening?" the prelate demanded. "Why are our ships losing power?" His tactical officer worked frantically at the controls. "The humans have found a way to disable our power grids. Ships are going offline across the fleet, then target their engines manually. Fire everything!" But the Korvax fleet, designed for overwhelming force, struggled against an enemy that had learned every dirty trick in human history. Disabled ships created obstacles that living ships had to navigate around. The perfect formation broke apart as vessels tried to avoid colliding with their own disabled comrades. The Allied fleet pressed the advantage. Krell ships, smaller and more maneuverable than the Korvax vessels, darted through the chaos like wolves among sheep. Vrax carriers launched fighters that swarmed the enemy command ships. On Earth, billions watched the battle through live feeds. The fate of their world hung in the balance once again. Parents held children, lovers held each other, and everyone prayed to whatever gods they believed in. The battle raged for 2 days. The Korvax fleet's numer. The silence after battle was always the hardest part. Deho stood alone on the observation deck of the horizon, staring at the debris field where thousands had died. Each piece of wreckage represented someone's friend, someone's family member, someone's future that would never happen. The victory felt empty. "Captain," a voice said softly behind him. It was Hana, looking as exhausted as he felt. The Alliance representatives are gathering on Mars. They are asking for you to attend. Why Mars? Tejo asked, not turning around. Because it's neutral ground. Not Earth, not any alien world. A place where we can all meet as equals and decide what comes next? Tejo finally turned to face her. What if we can't agree? What if all we did was replace one empire with a dozen smaller ones fighting each other? Then we try anyway, Hana said. Because the alternative is going back to what the council was, and too many people died to let that happen. 3 days later, representatives from 23 species gathered in a hastily constructed facility on Mars. The building was simple, built by human and alien workers side by side. No grand monuments, no displays of power, just a meeting place where voices could be heard. Hana stood at the center of the assembly, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Around her sat beings of every shape and size. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others required specialized atmosphere suits. Some had been slaves under the council for centuries. Others had been masters. All of them were here because they had chosen to be. We all know why we're here, Hana began. Her voice translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. The Galactic Council is gone. The old order is dead. Now we must decide what replaces it. A Krell representative stood, his scaled body catching the light. My people say we should establish a new council, but one where all species have equal voice. And how do we guarantee that equality? A Vrax delegate asked, her wings rustling with agitation. The council promised equality too at the beginning. Then the strong dominated the weak, as always happens. Then we don't have a council at all, another voice suggested. Each species governs itself. We cooperate when needed, but no central authority. The debate continued for hours. Some wanted strong centralized leadership to prevent chaos. Others wanted complete independence, afraid that any central power would eventually become tyrannical. The room grew heated, voices raised, old tensions surfacing. Finally, Minji stood. The Earth intelligence officer had been sitting quietly, listening to everything. Now she had something to say. You're all thinking about this wrong, she said. The room fell silent, surprised by her interruption. You're trying to build a government that rules. But what if we build something that protects instead? Explain, Hana prompted. The council's power came from fear, Minji continued. They could destroy anyone who resisted. But what if we created an alliance based on mutual defense? Each species keeps its sovereignty, its freedom to govern itself. But if anyone threatens a member of the alliance, they face all of us together. That's just a military pact, someone objected. It doesn't address trade, resources, disputes between members. So we handle those separately, Minji replied. Species can negotiate their own agreements for trade and cooperation. But the alliance itself exists for one purpose, to ensure that no species, anywhere, ever has to submit to tyranny again. The room buzzed with discussion. It was a radical idea, giving up the security of central authority in favor of individual freedom. But after what they had all experienced, after seeing what the council had become, the idea had appeal. Tejo, sitting in the assembly as Earth's military representative, spoke up. There's one more thing we need to address. What about the Korvax and other species still loyal to the old council? Do we force them to join or do we let them go? We let them go, Hana said immediately. Any species that wants to leave is free to do so. We fought for the right to choose our own path. We can't deny that right to others, even those who opposed us. Even if they might attack us again someday? A delegate asked skeptically. Especially then, Hana insisted. Because if we force them to stay, we become exactly what we fought against. We have to trust that given freedom, most beings will choose peace over war. The vote took another full day. 23 species debated every detail, every principle, every procedure. But finally, exhausted and hoarse, they reached an agreement. The Galactic Coalition was born, not as a government but as a promise. Each member species retained complete sovereignty, but they pledged to defend each other against aggression and to resolve disputes through negotiation rather than war. It wasn't perfect. There would be problems, conflicts, and difficult decisions ahead, but it was better than what came before. As the assembly concluded, Fleet Admiral Youngsik made a decision that surprised everyone. He requested permission to address the coalition before they dispersed. I have served Earth for 43 years, he said, his voice tired but steady. I have given orders that sent thousands to their deaths. I have made decisions that I will question for the rest of my life. Now the war is over and it's time for others to lead. He removed his admiral's insignia and placed it on the table. Earth's military will be restructured for defense, not conquest. We will share our technology and tactics with coalition members to ensure that every species can defend itself. But as for me, I'm done with war. Someone younger and wiser should guide Earth's future. There was respect in the silence that followed. Young Sik had led humanity through its darkest hours. Now he was choosing to step aside so that peace could have a chance. Minji was offered the position of Earth's first galactic ambassador. She accepted, knowing it would mean years of difficult negotiations and delicate diplomacy. But if it meant preventing another war, she was willing to try. Tae Yang, the young engineer whose discoveries had been crucial to Earth's victories, established a technology-sharing program. His workshop on Luna Base became a gathering place for scientists from across the coalition. The same minds that had created weapons now worked together to solve problems of energy, food production, and space travel. Imagine what we can accomplish when we work together instead of fight, Tae Yang told his diverse team. The Council wasted 12,000 years maintaining control. We can spend the next 12,000 years reaching for the stars. Daeho received a promotion to Coalition Fleet Commander, but it was a very different position than what he had held during the war. Instead of planning attacks, he now coordinated joint training exercises. Instead of fighting battles, he worked to prevent them through mutual understanding and shared defense protocols. He thought often of Jiwoo, who had sacrificed himself to save the horizon. A memorial was built on Mars, listing the names of everyone who had died in the war. Humans, Krell, Vrax, and others all together. They had come from different worlds, but they had fought for the same ideal: freedom. Not everyone was happy with the new order. Some Korvax refused to accept the coalition, retreating to isolated systems where they tried to maintain the old ways. Some species, scarred by centuries of council rule, struggled to trust anyone. Some humans wanted Earth to claim a dominant position, arguing that they had earned it through sacrifice. But slowly, gradually, the coalition found its footing. Trade routes opened between species that had never spoken before. Cultural exchanges began. Young beings from different worlds attended the same schools, learned the same histories, and built friendships that would have been impossible under the Council. 5 years after the war ended, Hana stood once again on Mars, this time at a ceremony marking the coalition's anniversary. Representatives from 47 species attended, nearly double the original number. The simple building had been expanded multiple times to accommodate the growing membership. "We've come a long way," she told the assembly, "but we have further to go. There are still species suffering under tyrants. There are still conflicts that need resolution. There are still those who would rebuild the old ways if given the chance." She paused, looking around at the diverse faces watching her. "But we proved something important. We proved that authority without consent is not authority at all, just force. We proved that different species can work together as equals. We proved that even an empire that stood for 12,000 years can fall when people refuse to accept oppression." Earth's defiance didn't just save humanity, she continued. It freed the galaxy, and while the path ahead won't be easy, at least now we walk it together by choice, not by command. The assembly rose in approval, a gesture that had become the coalition's symbol of agreement. Beings who couldn't applaud with hands expressed approval in their own ways. Wings rustled, crystals chimed, voices hummed in harmony. Daeho, watching from the military section, felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. They had shattered the stars with their defiance, broken an ancient order that seemed unbreakable. Now they were building something new from the pieces. It wouldn't last forever. Nothing did. Someday perhaps the coalition itself would face challenges that would test whether it could live up to its ideals. Future generations would have to fight their own battles, make their own choices, determine their own fates. But for now, for this moment, the galaxy was free. Not perfect, not peacefully,